can't stand it any longer. But I can't stand it any longer. But I can't stand it any longer. But I can't stand it any longer.
Okay, so Polo rig. I'm just.
I can't stand it any
Can you hear the audio?
But I can't stand it any
Oh.
longer.
Yeah, very
You
quiet,
can.
very quiet,
I
very
can't
quiet.
stand it any longer.
Yeah, it's just a bit of him saying, I can't stand it any longer, basically.
Mm.
Just 50 frames. So I guess what I'd start with is, I guess I'd need like a neutral mouth shape to start the shot. Keep it simple. Push that. So usually when you pose like slightly side on like this, so his head's 3/4, he's not completely facing us. He's 3/4. If you leave this out, especially when you can see past the teeth, you get this like gap here, which is super gross. So I usually try and push back in 3D space. So like, it's not really illustrating my point here, and this rig is it. But that gap's ugly, so I try and get rid of it, and I always cheat the teeth. Bottom teeth, usually don't like seeing them personally. Whatever, let's just say that's the default mouth. And he's going eye. So I often reset the pose when I'm starting a new one, just so I don't have loads of random stuff going on. Eye, eye. So I guess that would kind of just be like a kind of shape. This guy's super easy to get nice shapes with, to be fair. Maybe I'll try and push the asymmetry a bit and get like it opening. So yeah, literally just looking at this shape, if the teeth and tongue weren't there, what that shape is. And that's kind of what I'm transitioning with as well. And then within that shape, what can I lead and follow with? But the fun stuff I was on about, so this control here, that moves like the whole lips basically. I'll oftentimes fuck with that a little bit. So this is a bit more silhouetted almost, or it's like pushed around a little bit just so you're getting a bit more shape change between these two poses. It kind of settles, and then he goes can't stand. Often I'll go towards like the next big mouth change. So here's kind of the S, because this is kind of within this pose almost, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll end up back at stand, so big tense up S shape. So let's try and get something that works for that. So here's an instance where teeth, I always just try and do it graphically to camera. So let's get some tension in here. Bring up these boys. Maybe I'll bias this side more. And maybe I'll even go up to get a bit more compression. So that shape change is bigger as well. Stand. It's tension. Stuff. Alright. So I think this needs to probably be similar in terms of the mouth shapes, but he's just kind of settling a bit for that. Because the can't is there, so maybe I'll keep this basically the same with a tiny bit of a moving hold. Blend it back a little bit. Okay, so this, now I'm viewing this, it's almost like a pose to pose with a breakdown, and the breakdown is the cat shape, right, in the middle here. So the jaw's going to open for that shape change. And this is where the fun bit comes in. So we're going from pose to pose, but what can I lead and follow with? So the jaw's kind of doing its own thing. I'm thinking, what within this lip shape can I lead and follow with? So maybe I want to lead with this side and delay this side a bit or something, just to mix it up. Although that arc's trash, so I'll go wider. Kind of looking at this little cube, making sure it's in arc. Probably should do the same for this one as well. It's super wide. And for the big corners, of course. So yeah, I'm going to lead this side open, and this other side's not going to do too much. So maybe for contrast's sake, during this hold, this comes in a little bit. It's way too much, so I'll just blend it back. That way we've got a bit more room to move in.
Can't stand it.
Okay.
I can't stand it. 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 I can't stand it anymore. I can't.
Okay, that's super basic right now. I kind of want to get into here quite sharply. So maybe get all the teeth and tongue stuff sort of there, and the jaw. Maybe the jaw can already be there, not just. So now this is leading still, so that's maybe overshoot it wide a little bit or something. This one was dragging. Let's drag it continuously a little bit. Don't want it to be too much, it's kind of isolated still. I guess this would be pretty tiny. And maybe I'd do, like, between these two, a little bit more compression on here as well.
Can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
I think maybe this needs to be a bit more closed through here for contrast's sake. So let's get that.
Can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it any longer.
I end up going on ones for a lot of this stuff, so like the fact that the teeth just kind of pop in on this frame. Probably want to get something a bit more transitional in here. And then maybe for this frame you just about see them. Something like that. Just so they don't just pop in out of nowhere. I feel like can't the T, you touch the roof of your mouth with your tongue. So I'm gonna maybe just on ones or something, just get like a little tongue touch thing going on. And then it can.
Can't stand it anymore. Can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
It's like it's completely different from how I was taught to do Lipsync.
This is like complete. I mean, it's basically just pose to pose, but with shapes instead of. But I'm still thinking about when I'm hitting the like shapes and making sure the shapes are the right shapes for like the mouth positions. I would usually have reference as well, just for kind of timing. But then the shapes would be way more pushed because I'm going for like a cartoony style instead of, yeah.
There was MPC. It was they recommended like a layered, so you start with the jaw, then the lip corners, then do a pass with the like shapes, then do a pass with the rest, literally like the nose and then eyebrows and then stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's benefit to that, but for me, I think doing it in a more pose-to-pose method for the lip sync especially, it's like I'm thinking about the shape and what's leading and what's following, and you get a lot for free in that sense. So he actually holds this S sound for a while here.
Can't stand it anymore. Can't stand.
and then I think he's going to like blast out of it, so it'll probably be a 1 frame to the ah. So again, I'll reset my pose. I've got a shortcut for that. I'll go that to there, and then I want to stand. So
I need to buy this rig. I'm gonna buy it. Like,
yeah, it's good for the face stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of its body shape stuff. Stand. I'm going to keep some tension up here just for graphic. Stand. But again, I fucking hate bottom teeth. I think they don't work graphically very well most of the time, so I usually sack them off. And then I'll transition them on like a quick transition or something. I'll get them to hide. I mean, this is 1 frame. Stand. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. It's quite a... He sort of mumbles through half this line into kind of a big shape transition.
yeah.
But in terms of jaw, I guess it would... So, I mean, you could do something layered here, where I'm thinking about, like, just the... And then he's...
Standing.
Yeah, it's quite awkward. But, so again here, I'll do this later, but the law and then this L is kind of like what I did with the S here, where I'm trying to get to the next main change, which is kind of when he gets to this hold on the L before releasing again. So I'm going to make a pose here for the... I might go from this one just because it's still pretty clean. But he's going into an O, so I need to start going into the O.
Pickle, just go and get some, right?
So yeah, I make these tiny little pickers like this, just because I like having them. I like just having camera space on screen most of the time. He's going between the L and the O, so he's kind of tensing up for the longer. So I don't know if this does have zip up here. So that will get this, for O shapes, the zips are usually really useful. Some rigs have like a zip thing in this control, sometimes you have to go in and use like the micro ones and pose it yourself, but this one's pretty good for it. Still trying to... I'll probably push it up a bit just for contrast's sake. I kind of want this to graphically read. Right now it's just a red blob, right? So I might just cheat it and translate the end up and rotate it so that you can see the breakup and that shape in there a little bit easier.
Just very 2D.
Yeah, this is all like, how can I get the graphic shape that reads as that thing? Okay, so we're getting to the L from the can. It's no stand. So this is where the it happens. So the jaw's probably going to be settled by this point and then come back out again. Stand. But here, even though I'm trying to pop into it on 1 frame, I will usually make this like a real tight. Let's make sure this is actually that frame. And then I'll ease this super hard into it, just so it's got a little bit of somewhere to go. And then I might delay a certain part of it, so in this case I might delay...
Have the power.
So yeah, I'm going to delay a little part of it like this. But maybe I want to bias one side a little bit more than the other. And I also think there's probably a lick stand. I think you do probably flick your tongue for a frame or so in it as well. Let's just get the shape. Yeah. Stand. So I think he's going to be getting wider as he comes back up here. I've selected a random control. Stand. this to be a frame earlier. Stand it any. It's a lot in a short space of time, so it's kind of awkward.
Stand it any longer. I can't stand it any longer.
Yeah, this is proper muddly. So this, I might think about what you were saying, where I'm just thinking about the jaw for a second. I might. Any is here. Not too much. This is going to be a strong ease in this.
Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer.
So it's super blendy and spliny at the moment. I'll just select it without the jaw. Maybe I'll make a button for without the jaw for whilst I'm doing this. The tongue is just sort of blending weirdly at the moment. Let's keep it 100% back for all of this section.
Stand it any longer. 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 Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer.
Stand it any longer. I feel like maybe it's getting. I'm trying to think now about these corners. Maybe they're getting wider until he starts to go for the longer bit. Any. Don't know that.
Stand it any longer. 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 Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer.
It's kind of gross. This is where reference would definitely help for a super muddled up part like this.
What's he saying here?
Stand it any longer, but he says it like stand it any longer, so it's like really like blah 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 blah. So that's maybe.
You can pronounce the D with his stand it with a D shape, with more of his tongue towards the roof, no?
Stand it. Yeah. Okay. Stand. Da, da, da. Yeah, true, you do touch him up. So this is why reference would definitely help. So let's get yeah, let's get this to the roof again. I'm just gonna copy this.
Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer.
Let's try break this down a bit better. Just gonna do it on this first controller again. And then maybe I need the second one. Just want to get like a snaky, so that the translate's kind of leading the rotate, and it flicks up. It looks like the rig's dying on itself in the middle there.
Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it.
Okay, so let's look at these corners quickly. We'll come in here to here. Maybe try and get like a little arc going in here.
Compound later.
Any longer. Any longer. Any longer. Stand it any longer. Stand it any longer.
Yeah, that's bit too much, I think. Okay, I need to figure out this longer bit. Longer. So I'll probably figure out this R shape. I'm gonna try and do something fun and graphic and get the whole mouth over here. Longer. Maybe I have to use like some of these to get this fucking shit back. Yeah, okay. Push that back a bit more. It's still got a ton of zip on it because it's R shape.
Longer.
Longer. Right, this is too open for an R. See, this shape's getting super muddled now.
Longer, any longer, and any longer, and any longer.
I don't really like that as an R shape. Oh yeah, I can just use the... Oh, these have got a bunch of attributes as well, haven't they? Longer. Lip roll, press. Alright, let's just break down into this. Oh, didn't mean to click something random. Okay. Okay, so this jaw is going to be long. Yeah, super gross at the moment. Okay. Let's just keep the zip going. Maybe push the whole thing. Just thinking about the spacing of the whole shape, like maybe we can do something fun with it and go like way over.
Longer, any longer, any longer, any longer, any longer, and 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 any longer.
Kind of works. This is kind of gross because it's all moving as one piece, which you don't really ever want. Tracking pieces to try and get it less gross. I don't know why this control's limited, like it's super stuck. Doesn't just move around freely.
Longer, any longer, any longer, any longer, any longer.
But now that back corner kind of whips around a slightly different space into the rest of it.
Any longer, any longer. I can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer.
Anyway, so usually want you probably want this to and then kind of settle back a little bit.
Longer, any longer, any longer.
So it doesn't just die at the end.
Any longer. I can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it any longer. Damn it.
So this, one thing I forgot to do, this is completely still, but I want this to be building in tension, because he's like, shh, stand it. So let's push these. I'm starting to get this Wolfston football mouth thing going again. Because I animate that one instantly.
He moves very well.
Yeah, that's nice. Although we're getting wider there, and then I'm going back in, so that looks kind of shit. So let's make sure this is at least going a bit wider.
Stand it and it can't stand it and it can't stand it.
Yeah, so now it's kind of being a bit fucky because I'm kind of doing something different between this and this. So let's maybe just delete that and let it transition.
Stand it and it can't stand it any longer. 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 Can't stand it any longer.
But there you go, I mean that's a pretty bash out on just the mouth shape stuff. That its main stuff is just like graphic shapes, push in, lead and follow within breakdowns. I'm kind of treating it like a pose to pose in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I might do something fun here. Maybe I can overshoot this around on itself or something. So that gave it a little bit of fleshiness. Do something similar for this. Overshoot this shape. Come back out of it. And then settle back. Don't like that shape, but basically arcs on everything.
Can't stand it any longer.
But then what I'd do is I'd get the graph editor up. Just to rotate X on this. Maybe make sure it's not dying completely at any points. You can copy this. Got the squash and stretch. Get the Y on the squash and stretch. Make sure that my settings on my paste is like clipboard replace, and it like if I keep the time range, it doesn't matter where I paste it, it'll copy from the previous curve. And so the paste settings. So if I go edit, paste, and do the little box here, what I use is from the clipboard. That's just time range, so it doesn't just paste it from like the very start or the end or the current frame. It does it from, so I think by default it's the current frame, but I like to just do clipboard so that I can be anywhere and it'll paste the curve onto a different curve and match what I've copied, the same timings. Replace on here I think I've changed, so it doesn't just insert on top of what it has, it keeps the values, but then connect will take the furthest left value and paste from there. So say like I had the jaw on that frame, but say I had this squash that had a value. If I paste, it's going to paste from up there, and that's... Wait, did that work out? Let's see. What value is this? This is 0.84. Still 0.84. It'll paste it from whatever that is. So if you have like something in the pose, you can get it back.
Yeah.
But I'll just do it from 0. So now I've got this curve. So I think it's just, yeah, so I need to flip it. I have a little shortcut for flip it, and then I need
X equals
you
-1.
can do this. You can do X equals -1 and it'll do that in here, but I just have Shift F and it flips, and then I'll just scale this back to default like a whole bunch. And I'll probably, because it's biasing, like it's only going from the default out, it's not really squishing up at all, so I'll probably push it up to balance it.
So what have you pasted it to?
This is the jaw squash and stretch thing.
Oh yeah. Cool.
So this does all this stuff. It's quite nice definitions.
Can't stand it any longer.
So I can offset this. I can try offsetting this for frame and see how it looks.
Can't stand it any longer.
But maybe I'll think that's a bit too much. So if I want like a half frame offset, I'll just scale it up by a frame instead of posting it or whatever, and then snap it.
Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer.
But you can do fun stuff now, like I can start fucking around with like way cartoony stuff with this squash and stretch control, and I can like just look at the left to right of the jaw as well, and I can maybe even overshoot it here. Look at that curve, it's overshooting and coming back.
The left and right sort of stuff will be done with squash and stretch only.
You can do it with a rotate Z on the jaw as well. Depends on the rig. I just quite like the squash and stretch on this one. I mean, this is super mushy at the moment, so I might, you know, like tone it way down, blend it back.
Longer, any longer, any longer. Can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it any.
So maybe for this big tense here, I'll go back on itself. So I need to kind of get that from these ones.
Can't stand it.
Maybe this does need to be. So on the bigger shape changes where I'm kind of hiding this transition in the pose. So if I was to do it when it wasn't moving, it would look pretty weird. But because I'm doing it on this, the majority of it's happening with the biggest shape change. It's going to read a bit easier. I'll cut this over a bit. Fiddle with the curve. Damn. I'll have this coming back for this bit. And just for like contrast sake, I might push this to might just do a tiny little back on itself so that it's got further to go.
I can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it.
Looking at this last bit, I'm like, well, that's way too much. So let's just scale it back a bunch.
I can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it any longer.
What you can do is just take the curve from the jaw again. So this is the open and close. And I can select like all this cheek shit. Maybe some of these ones as well. What are these? I don't know. We'll just do all of them. I haven't got key on them at the moment, so it's going to confuse it. If I just go with the Y on all of these.
I can't stand it any
So again, it's upside down. I'll flip it.
longer. I can't stand it any
And it's
longer.
done! I'll fucking scale it to default a bunch.
I can't
So
stand it any
what button
longer.
did you hear? What did you highlight when you to your machine? What button was that?
Oh, okay, so that was scale to default, just Alt and
Oh.
Shift on here, and then it turns to BD, which is blend to default. Then I can just click wherever.
Can't stand it any longer. I can't
So I
stand
don't
it
know.
any longer.
I guess I don't know where this random bit at the end is coming from. Maybe I had a key there randomly.
I can't stand it any longer.
So that's connected now, but it's 1-to-1, so I don't want it to be 1-to-1. I'll offset it a frame.
I can't stand it any longer.
So there you go. It's offset. You can kind of see it in there.
Any longer.
It might still be a bit too much. Bring it back a bit.
I can't stand it any longer.
But then maybe I want like these two, because they're further out, to be even more offset. So maybe I then offset these a frame again. Offset two then.
I can't stand it any longer.
So yeah, you can see that
Can't
that's
stand
offset
it
from
any
that,
longer.
and it's all kind of
Can't
connected.
stand it any longer. I can't stand it any longer.
And then you can connect that again if you want into the. So I can take the scaled down curves from these, copy that, take that again onto like the bottom eyelids. Set a key so that exists. Just a TY.
Can't stand it any longer.
So that's connected now, but because I'll end up, if I was to continue with this, I'll just blend it back to the pose.
Can't
I only want that to be really subtle, so I'm going to keep blending it
stand
back.
any longer.
Yeah, just like
Can't
that.
stand it any longer.
Just because I'm
Can't stand
not really going to be, like if I'm going to be animating the bottom eyelids anyway, so I'm going to be doing something on the eyes, I don't want it to affect my posing too much. It's just a little bit of connectivity for free. And then I'm going to scale it up a frame as well, just so it's a tiny bit offset as well. Because the further away from the mouth, which is driving that action, the more offset it is by a tiny bit.
any longer. I can't stand it any longer. I can't stand it any longer.
But then you can do, like, what does he have? Which ones are these? These cheeks here. So these cheeks here, maybe I'll take the jaw, well, I mean I've already got the jaw curve copied. So I'll take the TX on here, and I can have it go in and out as he's opening and closing.
I can't stand it any longer.
But I can't tell if it's right or not. It might be right.
So does it go out as it opens?
So as it opens it goes in, and as it closes
Yeah.
it comes out. Maybe I'll even want to scale this up a bit. I'm just going to use the normal scale for that.
Can't stand it any longer.
So what the jaw?
And this is slightly offset still because I copied the curve from the thing here.
Can't stand it any longer.
So that's a bit of connectivity there.
Any longer. Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any.
But for this big like thing here, I might, like, I'm not just copying, I'm thinking about it as well. Like, so this bit here, I kind of want to tense up even more because it's like this big thing. I think maybe I can do like one frame ease out on it, but then go to come way up.
Can't stand it any. Can't.
Just because that bit's like he's super tensing. I'm gonna push that bit just to get the.
Can't stand it any longer. 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 Can't stand it any longer.
But then you can keep going. It's like the nose. What about the corner of this mouth? Let's take the X and Y. The curves are a bit shit, but yeah, the curves might be too shit. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see if it works. If I copy that and then I'll go on here, go on the X and Y, paste it on.
Can't stand it any longer.
Okay, so the X looks like it needs to be flipped.
Can't stand it any.
No, actually, I think it was right. It's just too much. So then again, I'll scale it down to default a bunch until it doesn't look too forked.
Can't stand it any longer.
Okay, so this is too much. So I'm going to scale it way back.
Can't stand it any longer.
Way too much.
Can't stand it any longer.
I think the longer bit, this might be too much. So again, I'll just tweak it.
Can't stand it any longer.
But I'm getting that connectivity for free, and then I'll probably offset it a frame because it's 1:1 still.
Can't stand it any longer.
So I imagine the other mouth corner is even more fucked than this one curve-wise because I've just sort of cheated for camera. So I'm just going to mirror the whole thing with animate onto that one.
Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer.
I don't know. I don't like what the nose is doing for that longer bit there. I kind of want it to be a bit more solid. It might be the squash and stretch that's causing that.
She haven't really animated the nose at all. Actually.
Not this bit, no. So I might just cheat it. So it's a bit more solid and doesn't go as much. And the back of it, yeah.
Any longer. Any longer.
So it's still connected because of that squash and stretch controller.
Any longer.
It's moving all of
Can't
it.
stand it any longer.
Eyebrows and eyes are all kind of separate to that, and then maybe I'd use layers to, like, if I did something with the eyes, to blend it into the cheeks and that sort of thing, just so you get a bit of both, and it's kind of connected in both ways.
Stand it any longer.
Yeah, I still don't like that.
Can't stand it any longer.
I don't like this R shape at the end.
Longer. Can't stand it any longer.
Like, the actual mouth shape for that R is a bit gross. If I was a better animator, I would, not do that.
Can't stand it any longer.
But you can see a lot of this connectivity stuff. I mean, depending on how close up you are. If I'm this close up, I might scale that down, especially this bit on the eyes going up and down. But if I was further away, so if it was a wider shot, I would have that scaled more up, so that it's more visible. And if you're closer, you'd have it down, so it's less visible, if that makes sense. And like, this is kind of a connectivity thing, but say if I wanted, so this, stand it in here, I'd probably have like, everything, eyebrows, eyes, bit of nose, flaring, everything for this tension part of this pose. So I mean, I've got that free connectivity. Sometimes if I want animation on the thing, those copy paste I'll do on a separate layer, and then I can scale up and down that stuff, and then have like actual pose changes within those controllers themselves if I want something specific. So then you've got that free connectivity already from the jaw, but then you've also got your posing on top of it to add to everything, You got any questions there?
No, that's pretty much it, man.
Yeah. Do you think that's useful, just as like a general?
No, yeah, it is.
I have recorded it. I'll watch it back at some point and probably be embarrassed at how terrible I explained everything. But we'll see.